Good girl. Bring it back. Good girl. Okay. What do you think, girl? Do you think Israel belongs to Palestinians or to the Jewish people? What do you think? Let's go through all their books. Let's see what they have to say, and we'll draw our conclusion from there. How about that? And we'll share it with people. What do you think? Is that a good idea? I like it. I think it's a good idea. Oh, shit. All right, let's go. So I've been seeing a lot of news on the Palestine-Israel conflict. However, it blows my mind how so many people, politicians, the news, social media experts, people say that the Hamas and the whole goal for taking over Israel or attacking Israel has nothing to do with religion, when it has everything to do with religion, and it has had everything to do with religion since the beginning of time. In this video, it's going to be kind of long. We're going to cover a few things. We're going to see if the children of Palestine are mentioned by the Quran and Sahih Bukhari. Then we're going to discuss what the Muslims think about the Jews according to their literature. Then I want to show you guys the actual Hamas charter paperwork that shows exactly why Hamas formed and what their goal is. And lastly, we're going to cover the history of Israel, the history of Palestine. I hope you guys enjoy. Okay guys, with the big controversy that's been going around that Palestine was there before Israel, I want to dig into the Muslims' literature and the Quran and the Sahih Bukhari, and I want to see if Muhammad or Allah spoke about the children of Palestine and the children of Israel. So here are some of the surahs and ayahs. Surahs and ayahs are like chapter and verse. So these are all of the chapters and verses, surahs and ayahs, that speak of the children of Israel. "39 times the Quran speaks about the children of Israel. But I'm interested to know if the Quran speaks anything about the children of Palestine. And nothing. I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm going based off of the Quran. There is nothing that speaks about the children of Palestine. However, in some of the new modern Qurans, they added the word Palestine into it, and they put it in brackets to show you that they added it, but it doesn't say anything about it. There's not even a single mention about it. So when we look at the Quran verses that mention the children of Israel, next to the Quran verses that mention the children of Palestine, it's clear. But why doesn't the Quran and Allah mention or acknowledge Palestine or Palestinians? Well, perhaps this is because the Palestinians didn't exist as an ethnic group until 3,000 years after the children of Israel had conquered the Holy Land already, from the river to the sea. And let's be honest, folks. If the Muslims and the people who are pro-Palestine and saying that Palestinians were there first, and that the Israelites need to get out, and if that was true, which is not, but if it was true, then they should hold themselves to the same standard. That means there's like 49 countries that Islam conquered and took over. They'd be giving back their Holy Land, Mecca. They'd be giving back Mecca. They'd be giving back Constantinople. And they would most definitely have to give back the Temple Mount. They'd be giving back so many places that they originally took from, if we're going to go by their standards. But they're not going to do that. This isn't really about morals, who's right, who's wrong. The Quran teaches hatred for Jews. In fact, they say that the end times won't come until all the Jews are dead. And in Islamic literature, it teaches to kill every Jew that hides behind a stone. They refer to Jews as pigs, as animals, not even human. The Quran actually says to fight them, the unbelievers, until religion is all for Allah. And that's in Surah 8, Ayah 39, inside the Quran. And in Robert Spencer's book, The History of Jihad from Muhammad to ISIS, on page 343, the Islamic Brotherhood says, "In working to establish that Islamic State, Muslim Brotherhood members in the United States, quote, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad, in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within, and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions." But after spending 2 years day in, day out, reading the Quran, learning the history, reading Sahih al-Bukhari, I have to ask a question to everybody watching this video. How many people who are listening right now have actually read the entire Quran? How many of you have actually read Sahih al-Bukhari? And be honest, think about that for a moment. Before you make your judgments on what I'm about to show or what I'm about to say, I want you to look in the mirror and honestly ask yourself, have I read the Quran? Do I really know the history of Islam? Do I really understand this theology?
But it's a system that allows the people to choose what they want and allows people freedom.
So why can't I choose Sharia? When in Rome, overthrow Caesar, implement the Sharia.
In your home, you can do whatever you want.
But what about in the public? Why can't I tell you to cover up? Am I free to say that?
Because it would be outrageous.
So where's my freedom? Where's my freedom?
You can say it to me, but
okay, so cover up. Wear the hijab.
That's absurd.
And for anybody to speak out about it, even me, people will think I'm Islamophobic. I'm not Islamophobic. I actually read the books. I actually put in the time, day in, day out, for 2 years straight, learning about Islam, going to the mosques, meeting with my Muslim friends, and learning about the history and traditions and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad and Islam as a whole. I can speak on it because I've put in the time to speak on it. There's so many people out there who are protesting for what they do not understand. I don't want to sound arrogant. I don't know it all. But I am saying, based off of what I know, from what I've learned, and from what I've read from their literature, I have a different view on the matter. So let's go to Surah 47, Ayah 4. So, chapter 47, verse 4. When you meet the unbelievers, strike off their heads, and when you have wreaked widespread slaughter among them, bind your captives firmly. Then either grant them their freedom, or take a ransom from them, until war shall lay down her burdens. Surah 2, Ayah 191. Slay them wherever you find them. Drive them out of the places from which they drove you. Idolatry is more grievous than bloodshed. It goes on to say, fight them until idolatry is no more, and God's religion reigns supreme. Islam is what they're talking about. Fight them until Islam's religion is supreme. Surah 8, Ayah 12. Remember when God revealed his will to the angels. I am with you, so give courage to the believers, i.e. the Muslims. I shall cast terror into the hearts of the infidels, i.e. the Christians, Jews, and anybody else who don't believe in Allah. Strike off their heads, strike off the very tips of their fingers. Surah 33, Ayah 60. Cursed wherever they are found, they shall be seized and put to death without mercy. And they're talking about the people of Medina who do not become Muslim, who resist against them. Surah 9, Ayah 123. Believers, Muslims, fight the infidels who dwell around you. Deal firmly with them, and know that God is with those that fear him. So Allah will protect those Muslims who are fighting in his cause. And in Surah 9, Ayah 28 through Ayah 31, they talk about how perverted and stupid and unclean Christians and Jews are. The adulterers are unclean. Fight those who believe in neither God nor the last day. So fight those who don't believe in Allah. And do not embrace the religion of truth until they render the tribute by hand in abject submission. God smite them, how perverse they are. Surah 9, Ayah 14. Fight them. God will chastise them at your hands and humble them. He will grant you victory over them and heal the spirit of the faithful. He will take away all rancor from their hearts. God shows mercy to whom he pleases. God is all-knowing and wise. Surah 9, chapter 5 to 6. When the sacred months are over, kill the adulterers wherever you find them. Arrest them, besiege them, and lie in ambush everywhere for them. For the adulterers are ignorant people. Surah 8, Ayah 39. Fight them until adultery shall cease, and God's religion, Allah's religion, Islam, shall reign supreme. So he's saying to fight them, kill them, get rid of them, until Islam is supreme. Surah 5, Ayah 51. Believers, take neither the Jews nor the Christians for your friends. Surah 4, Ayah 90. Seize them and slay them wherever you find them. Surah 4, Ayah 56. Those that deny our revelations will burn in fires. Surah 2, Ayah 216. Fighting is obligatory for you, much as you dislike it. But you may hate a thing although it is good for you, and love a thing although it is bad for you. God knows, but you know not. So fighting again is referring to the spread of Islam, to fight for Islam. You may not like it, but you're doing God's will. You're doing the will of Allah, and Allah knows better than you do, so do what you're told and fight. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So what does this mean? Pro-Palestinian protesters say it's not about religion. They say it's about genocide. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is the motto of Hamas, the terrorist group that governs Gaza. Since 1964, the slogan has embodied the motives of the Palestinian liberation movement, calling for Palestine to reach from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea as the 57th Islamic State, completely eradicating the state of Israel in the process. And this is outlined explicitly in the Hamas Charter. So I'm reading this new book by Alan Dershowitz called War Against the Jews, How to End Hamas Barbarism. And on page 4, it says exactly what I've been thinking. A lot of the pro-Palestinians are referring to everybody who don't agree with them as the Nazis. However, on page 4 in his book, he says, quote, according to Hamas, the ancient land of Israel has to be ethnically cleansed of all Jews, either by murdering them or chasing them out. Now, American anti-Semites on university campuses are echoing the Nazi mantra of cleansing the world of Jews. And this is very true. And especially when you look at what the Hamas Charter says. So in reality, it's actually the pro-Palestinian protesters who are acting like the Nazis. So Hamas has nothing to do with religion. The conflict has everything to do with the land. That's it. This is not a religious war. Let's see what the Hamas Charter has to say. So this is the covenant of the Islamic resistance movement, the Hamas Covenant Charter in 1988. In the name of the most merciful Allah, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. Because remember, Islam was spread by the sword. And in the introduction it says, the readiness to sacrifice life and all that is precious for the sake of Allah. So again, people say this has nothing to do with religion. However, Hamas says very clearly it has everything to do with religion. Hence the reason they keep mentioning Islam and Allah. The covenant of the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, clarifies its picture, reveals the identity, outlines its stand, explains its aims, speaks about its hopes, and calls for its support, adoption, and joining its ranks. Our struggle, jihad, against the Jews is very great and very serious. The movement is but one squadron that should be supported by more and more squadrons from this vast Arab and Islamic world, until the enemy is vanquished and Allah's victory is realized. And it goes on to say, the spreading of Islam, the conversion to Islam. In Article 3, in all that they fear Allah and raise the banner of jihad. So there's that word again. So when I say that pro-Palestinians are acting like jihadists and supporting jihad, this is clear. In all that they fear Allah and raise the banner of jihad. Article 4, keeps its secrets and wants to belong to its ranks and carry out the duty, Allah will certainly reward such one. So if you join their ranks, Allah will certainly reward you. Article 5, the Islamic message of the righteous ancestor, for Allah is its target. The Prophet is its example, and the Quran is its constitution. Article 6, the Islamic resistance movement is a distinguished Palestinian movement whose allegiance is to Allah, and whose way of life is Islam, and it strives to raise the banner of Allah over every inch of Palestine. Article 7, as a result of the fact that those Muslims who adhere to the ways of the Islamic resistance movement spread all over the world, rally support and strive towards enhancing its struggle, and the jihad operations of the Muslim Brotherhood in 1968 and after. There's the word jihad again. The Islamic resistance movement aspires to the realization of Allah's promise, bringing what Allah said in the Quran to reality. The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight the Jews, killing the Jews. Allah is its target, the Prophet is its model, the Quran is its constitution, jihad is its path, and death for the sake of Allah is the loftiest of its wishes. Article 11 states, the entire land of Israel rightly belongs to Hamas, and that no one except Islamic Arabs has any right to own it or live in it. Article 13. Initiatives and so-called peaceful solutions in international conferences are in contradiction to the principles of the Islamic resistance movement. Abusing any part of Palestine is abuse directed against part of religion. Nationalism of the Islamic resistance movement is part of its religion. Its members have been fed on that. For the sake of hoisting the banner of Allah over their homeland, they fight. Allah will be prominent, but most people do not know. But the Jews will not be pleased with thee, neither the Christians, until thou follow their religion. Say the direction of Allah is the true direction. And verily, if thou follow their desires, after the knowledge which hath been given thee, thou shalt find no patron or protector against Allah. It also says, quote, there is no solution for the Palestinian question except through jihad. Article 15, jihad becomes the individual duty of every Muslim in the face of the Jews. It is necessary to instill the spirit of jihad in the heart of the nation. And over here, which the young kids in college campuses here in America are proving, this is proof right here. This is the Hamas charter saying, it is necessary that scientists, educators, and teachers, information and media people, as well as the educated masses, especially the youth and sheikhs of the Islamic movements, should take part in the operation of awakening the masses.
شو بقولوا لك؟ إنه إحنا لازم جميعنا نأيد المقاومة، والمقاومين هم اللي لازم يرجعوا لنا بلدنا، وهيك كل بتاخذ بالقوة بيرجع شغل بالقوة.
أنا أقرأ اليهود.
يعني إنهم بيعلمونا بالمدرسة إنهم إرهابيين
إنهم هدول مش منيح وهدول بقتلوا قاعدين بشبابنا. إذا بطعن عمل عمليات.
I'm here with Musab Youssef, son of the Hamas co-founder. He turned his back on Hamas and is estranged from his family. He wrote a book, and here's what he says about these college protesters.
I love Hamas. I think Hamas.
Oh, you love a terrorist organization. Interesting. Harvard Square.
They should be all exterminated. And their kids, their mothers, their children, just like Hitler.
To all those students, I say that it's very disappointing to see Americans supporting Hamas and thinking that Hamas is a cool thing.
Israel, go to hell!
While Hamas does not respect any of those followers, while those followers don't know that Hamas would torture them and massacre them with no mercy. They call them useful idiots. They don't know that Hamas is a dark, black hole.
You guys are Nazis. You're the one killing Jews. Genocide.
You have no idea what you're talking about. I am being emotional. I have the right to be emotional because I speak on behalf of the children as a Palestinian child.
Majority of people lack purpose. They want a cause, and without a cause, they don't exist.
So here's a paradox. In America, we have a political left. It's a progressive left. As you know, it's sexually permissive. And this political movement appears strangely allied with radical Islam. Can you explain this?
When I was an extremist, Islamist, fundamentalist, I would only vote left.
Why is that?
I saw them as very stupid. I would fear the conservatives because they come with principle. That's not someone they can brainwash. But the left, I know they have no values and no principles to begin with. I dare you to find one Islamic extremist that votes for Donald Trump. Never do it. They'd give their vote to the leftist who wants to run around in pride parades. And Islamic extremists are against gays and homosexuals and transgenders, but they want the left to go and get busy with that. They want them, go speak about the climate, go speak about abortion, go kill yourselves, go do that. Ilhan Omar, she's fighting for abortion rights and all the other, my body, my choice. Yes, go do that. But would she have an abortion? Never. Never. Would she kill a Muslim in her stomach? Never.
What is the fundamentalist and jihadi agenda for America?
The future of America has to be Muslim.
And right here, clear as day, in Article 15, it says, the Palestinian problem is a religious problem. Jihad becomes the individual duty of every Muslim. So where does this idea come from, that jihad becomes the individual duty of every Muslim? And all you have to do is look in their own literature. Inside their Sahih al-Bukhari, it explains why it is the responsibility of each Muslim to follow jihad. In Sahih al-Bukhari it says, if you are called by the Muslim ruler for fighting, go forth immediately. Allah guarantees that he will admit the mujahid in his cause into paradise if he is killed. Otherwise, he will return him to his home safely, with rewards and war booty. Our Lord's message that whoever of us is martyred will go to paradise, which is why they have no problem dying for the cause of Allah, because they are promised that they'll go to paradise. Now then, I invite you to Islam, i.e. surrender to Allah. Embrace Islam and you will be safe. Embrace Islam and Allah will bestow on you a double reward. But if you reject this invitation of Islam, you shall be responsible for misguiding the peasants, i.e. your nation. O people of the scriptures, come to a word common to you and us, and you that we worship, none but Allah. So here it is the perfect example of come to Allah, embrace Islam, and you'll be safe. You'll just have to be a slave and pay taxes and live under Islamic rule, but you'll be safe. Don't come to Allah, we'll kill you. I swear by the holder of Muhammad's soul that I would like to invade and be killed for the sake of Allah. Then invade and be killed, and then invade again and be killed. And right here in my own copy of Sahih al-Bukhari, it says just that. I would love to be martyred in Allah's cause, and then get resurrected, and then get martyred, and then get resurrected again, and then get martyred, and then get resurrected again, and then get martyred. They're taking this right out of their own literature. And then liberal talking heads on CNN and other platforms who are pro-Islam will tell people that none of this is true, when all you have to do is open up their own books. This is what they taught. So they want to be killed invading in the name of Allah, for the sake of Allah, by teaching religious duties, comprehensive study of the Quran. And here in Article 31 it says, under the wing of Islam, it is possible for the followers of three religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, to coexist in peace and quiet with each other. Peace and quiet would not be possible except under the wing of Islam. Past and present history are best witness to that. So they're saying the only way we could have peace with Christians and Jews is if they submit to Islam like they have throughout history, because by force, Muhammad gave people three choices. You either join the ranks, you either pay a tax, jizya, and live under Islamic rule, or you can die. Doesn't seem like three very good choices.
When Muslims go and conquer the adjacent country, what do? We kill them all? No. The Prophet says, the first thing you do is call them to Islam. If they refuse, then tell them Allah obliged upon you to pay taxation. In return, when enemy comes and attack your country, you don't fight. We Muslims protect you. Subhanallah, for this little money? Yes. And you enjoy sitting in your homes and in your country and live your life normally. But the ruling is for Sharia. So you do not open nightclubs, you do not fornicate. If they refuse, then we have to fight. And if we fight you, then we capture you, you become our slaves, and we take your land, and you take because you refuse. I give you two good options in the coming 40, 50 years when the Muslims become strong as they're supposed to be.
Now, Israel is over 3,000 years old. Muslims had slaughtered and enslaved Jewish people for centuries before the 100-year conflict. So in reality, pro-Palestinian protesters are actually supporting the real oppressors. And here is why. Muslims say in their own literature that the land belongs to the Jewish. In Hadith 3059 Sahih al-Bukhari, by Allah, these people think that I have been unjust to them. This is their land. This is their land. And during the pre-Islamic period, they fought for it. And they embraced Islam willingly, which they did not, by the way, while it was in their possession. Okay, so the pro-Palestinian protesters' position is that the Palestinians are the indigenous people. This is wrong. Most of them don't know this because most of them don't know history. The Jewish presence in the Holy Land goes back to the beginning of time. The record of this historical fact can be found all over the New Testament and in ancient antiquities. So even the ancient historians wrote about the Jews and the people, the children of Israel. So you have Josephus, you have Tacitus, and you have Irenaeus. In 70 AD, there was the destruction of the temple.
Have you ever wondered why a place known in antiquity as Judea is now called Palestine? The answer lies in the annals of history, specifically during the Roman era. To unravel this mystery, we need to journey back to the 1st century AD, to the Roman Empire's conquest of the Jewish homeland. It was a time of tumult and change. The Jewish revolt, a fierce and bloody rebellion against Roman rule, erupted in AD 66. Despite their bravery and determination, the Jewish rebels were woefully outmatched by the might of the Roman military. Fast forward 4 years to AD 70. The Romans, under the command of future Emperor Titus, crushed the rebellion. Jerusalem, the heart of Jewish life and culture, was sacked. The Holy Temple, the center of Jewish worship, was destroyed. Following the suppression of the revolt, the Romans took drastic measures to erase Jewish identity from the region. Among these was a decision that would echo through the ages, the renaming of Judea. Now you might wonder, why rename a place? The answer is simple, yet chilling. Renaming is a form of cultural erasure, a way to suppress the memory of a defeated people, and the Romans were masters at it. In AD 135, following a second failed Jewish rebellion known as the Bar Kokhba Revolt, Emperor Hadrian decided to rename Judea. The new name? Syria Palestina. Palestina was a reference to the Philistines, ancient enemies of the Jews. By invoking this name, the Romans sought to further humiliate and diminish the Jewish presence in their ancestral homeland. Over time, the name Syria Palestina was shortened to Palestine, the name we know today. But the name Judea didn't disappear entirely. It lived on in the hearts and minds of the Jewish people and in the sacred texts of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So, the renaming of Judea to Palestine was not just a change of name. It was a deliberate act of cultural suppression, a way for the Romans to assert their dominance and reshape the narrative of a conquered people. But as history shows, names may change, but the spirit of a people cannot be so easily erased. In the end, the renaming of Judea to Palestine serves as a poignant reminder of the power of names, the resilience of identity, and the enduring nature of history.
Then the Romans were displaced by the Arabs when the Arabs conquered it in the 630s, and that is where the Muslim and Arab presence comes from. This comes much later than the Jewish presence in the land. For 3,000 years, the Jewish people were in that land long before Muhammad ever stepped foot. Now, this is the activist fallacy in the leftist mythology, that the Palestinians were there before the Jewish people. It's just historically incorrect. The Jews were there long before Muhammad ever stepped foot or the Arabs ever conquered it. There were no Arabs in that land until the 7th century, and the Jewish presence can be documented long before the 7th century. In 628, you have the attack on Khaybar, the largest Jewish community of the Arabian Peninsula. Muhammad's 700 followers attacks Khaybar. They burned down the Jewish people's date palm groves, destroying their main source of livelihood. The Jews were then forced to surrender and give up 50% of the harvest as a form of taxation, known as jizya. The Jews would endure this tax, humiliation, and discrimination for centuries under Islamic law.
Within 10 years, they conquered the land of Israel, Syria, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Persia. They advanced across North Africa, and in 711 AD, they conquered Spain. The victory led to the subjugation of the Jewish tribes and further expansion of the Islamic State. By the middle of the 8th century, 90% of the world's Jews were living under Islamic rule. Although the Jews were allowed to practice their own religion, they were treated legally as second-class citizens, officially designated dhimmi status, and subject to strict rules. If the Jewish people kept their heads down and followed the rules by paying the heavy annual tax, they could generally live without fear of forced conversion, massacre, or expulsion.
In 1622, the Banu Kanaka and the Banu Nadir, Jewish tribes are massacred by the Islamic prophet Muhammad. When Muhammad and his followers laid siege on the forts of the Jewish tribe, the Banu Qurayza, all of the men were beheaded, and the women and children were enslaved. The Jews who survived were the few that had agreed to convert to Islam out of fear. In 1066, we have the Granada Massacre. 4,000 Jewish people were killed by Muslims. Even the Arab presence is overshadowed later by the Turks, who ruled the area until the demise of the Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I. So if we're talking about when the Arabs ruled the Holy Land, you have to go back to about the 12th century to find it. And we're supposed to believe that the presence of the Arabs in the Holy Land is supposed to take precedence over the much longer and unbroken Jewish presence in the Holy Land? When the Zionist movement did start in the 19th century, the Jews who immigrated from Europe and elsewhere, they found Jews who never left that area. Those Jews had stayed there the entire time, and they were known as the Yeshu tribe. So how did the British gain control over Palestine? This is also a testimony of the Jewish ownership of the land. When the Ottoman Empire fell, one of its last acts was to cede the political power over the Holy Land to the League of Nations, the precursor to the United Nations. Then the League gave the land to Britain, not as British territory, but as what was called the Mandate for Palestine, to be set aside to create a Jewish national home. Why, then, did they pick this area? Because that was the historical site of the Jewish national home. The Jews have been there for centuries. The British were charged by the League of Nations with creating the State of Israel. They had ultimately put a ton of roadblocks in its way and truncated the area of the Mandate, which actually included Jordan at first, and they only kept the western part of it for this Jewish national home. So if we're talking about occupation in international law, the only country that actually has any genuine legal claim in the international law to that territory is Israel. In 1948, when the Jews came back into their land, they were buying the land often at unreasonably high prices. There was no theft of the land. There was no forcible occupation. These claims are historical myths. They did not happen. They're just not true. When the Arabs rejected the Peel Commission's recommendation for partition and the subsequent UN endorsement of that recommendation, between August and October of 1947, months before the UN partition plan would come into effect, it was clear that there would be war no matter what. No matter what course of action the UN took, they knew a war would be taking place. And in anticipation of this war, many of the Arab people of the Western Galilee, from Haifa to Akko, about 85,000 of them, and villages in between, closed their homes and went out to Beirut or Damascus, where they could wait for the end of the hostilities in safety. This happened between August and October of 1947. They waited until it was safe to return. In Galilee, around November 1947, some 100,000 of the Arab people also fled following their leader's example. These people were not as rich or connected as the 85,000 who had fled before them, so they simply walked away with whatever they can carry to Lebanon or Syria. At this point, neither Israel nor the Arab states were encouraging the masses to flee. The war had not even taken place yet. In December 1947, the hostilities between the Jews and the Arabs erupted, even though the mandate was still active. With the termination of the British control and the declaration of the State of Israel in May 1948, and freed from British obstruction, 7 Arab armies, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Morocco, all Muslim states by the way, all 7 invaded at once. When the war ended, some 700,000 Arabs have fled. The Ottomans actually, to conquer the Zionist movement, settled numerous Arabs forcibly from all over the Middle East in the Palestinian areas. Which is kind of ironic, because people will say that we're the indigenous Palestinians, and their very names betray that they are actually from areas quite far away from Palestine, and they were brought there by the Ottomans. The Jewish people were there first. They did not steal the land, plain and simple. So one of the ways Hamas brainwashes the masses, like the left and the pro-Palestinian protesters, they use a strategy called the CNN strategy. In Alan Dershowitz's book that I'm reading, he speaks about this, and he talks about the CNN strategy. I'm going to share a video real quick of him actually talking about it. That way you guys can get a better understanding of what it is and how it has brainwashed the masses.
Do you feel like we've demonstrated moral clarity in terms of how we're viewing this conflict?
No, what we're doing is we're just encouraging a repetition over and over and over again. Back in 2013, in my book on moral clarity, I predicted that Hamas would continue to use what it calls the CNN strategy and what I call the dead baby strategy. That is, it will attack Israel, kill many civilians, and Israel will retaliate. And in the process, because Hamas uses human shields, some Palestinian children will die, and then they'll parade those babies in front of CNN cameras, and the world will attack Israel and condemn Israel, and Hamas will have been the victor. So Hamas starts it, And then because of the way it controls the cycle, it continues and it will continue again. And if the CNN strategy continues, if the world just looks at these tragically killed children and innocent people in Gaza and doesn't realize that they're all the fault of Hamas, that Hamas uses them as human shields. One of the former heads of Hamas said, and I got a recording of it, and I quote it in the book, we in Hamas specialize in death. Our children, our old women, our invalids, and that's why we use them as human shields. Just the way you love life, we love death. And so this is a tactic, a strategy. You'd think that the media would understand it and not fall for it, but they become complicit in it. And I guarantee you, unless something relatively dramatic is done, this will happen again and again and again. The only thing different this time is it was much worse. In previous times, it was retail killing, a Jew here and there, a house here and there, a school here and there. This time it was, 1,400 children, women, the invalid, all killed as part of this Hamas strategy, and they're being rewarded for it on college campuses, in the media, and other places that ought to know better.
So here's an image of the pro-Palestinian protesters holding up a sign that says, "Stop doing what Hitler did to you." So what we're going to do real quick is we're going to go through the tactics that Hitler and his regime used to get people to hate the Jews. And we're going to see if it parallels with what the pro-Palestinian protesters and the left are doing and what Hamas is doing. Is this the same? Is Hamas like Hitler? Are they using the same tactics? Let's let history speak for itself. Unbiased, let's just let the history speak for itself and let's see if it parallels. In a book I've been reading by Glenn Beck, it is about Islam, exposing the truth about ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Iran, and the Caliphate, talks about how the Muslim Brotherhood and the Nazis collaborated together in order to rid the world of Jews. In fact, it was a Grand Mufti Muhammad Amin al-Husseini who gave Hitler the idea of making Jews wear the yellow Star of David. Al-Husseini personally engaged in violent jihad, armed revolts against Jewish immigrants to Palestine, and enlisted the Nazis to help eliminate the Jews from Palestine. Al-Husseini promised Islamic jihad to help exterminate the Jews everywhere in the world. And in April 1943, Al-Husseini personally organized and recruited a Bosnian Muslim division of the SS troops. He collaborated with top Hitler henchmen like Adolf Eichmann and Heinrich Himmler. He even took tours of German concentration camps to see the scientific method with which the Nazis used to destroy Europe's Jews. He hosted a popular radio broadcast in Germany, with thousands tuning in to hear his fiery brand of anti-Semitic Nazi propaganda. He publicly praised Hitler's decision to eradicate the Jews. And isn't it interesting that Mein Kampf, written by Adolf Hitler, is called My Struggle? It talks about a struggle against the Jews. So is jihad. Jihad means to struggle. Both people who historically oppress a people, the Jews, and they turn around and blame the Jews for oppressing them, and then call it their struggle. Jihad and Mein Kampf.
I love Hamas. I think Hamas...
Oh, you love a terrorist organization.
Sand
Interesting. Harvard Square.
They should be all exterminated. And their kids, their mothers, their children, just like Hitler.
So Hitler wanted to make the world an Aryan race and cleanse the world of Jews. And Hamas and Islamic groups throughout history want to make the world Islam and rid the world of Jews. And that's according to their own Quran. So I went to the Holocaust Encyclopedia website, and under the Nazi propaganda and censorship page, it reads, "The Nazis wanted Germans to support the Nazi dictatorship and believe in Nazi ideas. To accomplish this goal, they tried to control forms of communication through censorship and propaganda. This included control of newspapers, magazines, books, art, theater, music, movies, and radio." Hitler is not the only dictator in history, guys, who used these tactics. However, we're going to focus on Hitler because that's what the pro-Palestinian protesters think the Jewish people are acting like. So how did the Nazis use propaganda? The Nazis used propaganda to promote their ideas and beliefs. Beginning in March 1933, the regime tried to centralize its propaganda efforts in a new ministry led by Joseph Goebbels. This ministry was called the Reich Ministry of Enlightenment and Propaganda. The Nazis used a variety of propaganda tools to spread Nazi ideas. Examples of propaganda under Nazis included. Now, what I want to do is I want to go down one by one, and we're going to look at each one and then parallel it to what the pro-Palestinian protesters and the left are doing today. So, glorifying Adolf Hitler by using his image on postcards, posters, and in the press. Well, we're living in modern times, so our advertising is a little bit different. We have social media, we have YouTube, streaming, many different ways to get information out there nowadays as compared to back when the Nazis were running things. Glorifying Hamas by using their images on protest signs, posters, social media, and in the press. So let's see. Are they doing what Hitler did?
Here locally, a large demonstration in support of Palestine broke out in front of the Venetian today.
We need to stand here in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Palestine and show them that we support them in Las Vegas.
Es soll aber aus diesen Opfern heraus bei uns die Entschlossenheit kommen, wir eins mit den Verantwortlichen an diesen Opfern ein
Alright, so next on the list, the Nazis spread negative images and ideas about the Jews in magazines, films, cartoons, and other media. Spreading negative images and ideas about Jews on social media, YouTube, cartoons, and other media. Let's see. Do the pro-Palestinian protesters and leftists do this as well? So broadcasting Nazi speeches on the radio and public loudspeakers. Let's see if the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian protesters also broadcast in favor of Hamas on public loudspeakers, helping them spread jihad.
Over the last couple of weeks, I've attended many pro-Palestine demonstrations throughout the United States. But I can tell you this one in downtown Manhattan today is the largest crowd I've seen. And they're marching right now towards Wall Street, and their goal is to shut it down. Their goal is to send a message from New York all the way to Gaza. We're in downtown.
Wow.
Organizing large and celebratory Nazi party rallies. Let's see if the Hamas pro-Palestinian protesters are also organizing large and celebratory Hamas parties or pro-Palestine parties. Here's a drag show for Palestine, hosted by Daddy Satan. Nice. The Nazis created groups, like the Hitler Youth and League of German Girls, that fostered Nazi ideals. Let's see if the pro-Palestinians also create groups that foster ideas for Hamas and pro-Palestine, as part of their propaganda.
School's out in Gaza, and for thousands of teenagers here, this is how the holidays are spent. Preparation for the next conflict with Israel, handling firearms and physical training. Their enemy is very close, just a few hundred meters away at the border. There's every chance they're watching, so the tutors at this summer camp like to keep their faces covered. As part of their training program, cadets rehearse a cross-border raid to kidnap Israeli soldiers. It's a threat which Israel takes seriously.
He says many people are asking, this is the interviewer, since you have built 500 kilometers of tunnels, why haven't you built bomb shelters where civilians can hide during bombardments? And he says, we have built the tunnels because we have no other way of protecting ourselves from being targeted and killed. Those tunnels are meant to protect us from the airplanes. We are fighting from inside the tunnels. Everybody knows that 75% of the people in the Gaza Strip are refugees. And it is the responsibility of the United Nations to protect them. According to the Geneva Conventions, it is the responsibility of the occupation to provide them with all the services as long as they are under occupation. So you get that. By the way, the Gazan government is Hamas. They literally elected them. They provide public services. But according to this, it is amazing to hear members of an actual, honest-to-God, genocidal terrorist group citing the Geneva Conventions in their own defense.
Malcolm X said, and I quote, "We live in one of the rottenest countries that has ever existed on this earth. It's not Genocide Joe that has to go. It's the entire system that has to go. Any system that would allow such atrocities and such devilry to happen and would support it, such a system does not deserve to exist on God's earth." And so when these fools ask us if Israel has the right to exist, the chant "Death to Israel" has become the most logical chant shouted across the world today.
But in short, jihad linguistically is to struggle, and technically it is to fight for the cause of Allah. The Prophet said ﷺ to the person who asked him, "O Prophet of Allah, a man fights for the booty, for the money. A man fights for fame. A man fights because his kinship were attacked, so he's fighting with them. Who's among them is in jihad for sabilillah?" He said, "Whoever fights so that Allah's word is the highest." So this is jihad, when you fight for the cause of Allah Azza wa Jal. However, jihad can be categorized in 5 things. Jihad of shaitan, when you struggle, when you fight shaitan, this is jihad. Jihad of your own soul, and sometimes they're both interlinked. Then you have jihad of the disbelievers, the kuffar, mushrikeen, enemies of Islam. And then you have the jihad of the hypocrites who are claiming to be Muslims, but they're fighting and undermining Islam. And finally you have the jihad of the sinners, Muslims, but they're sinners. You have to jihad and strive, not kill them. See, jihad is not only killing. It can be done by words. Allah Azza wa Jal says about the Quran, and وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ. And you have to have jihad with the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ used to encourage jihad by words, like Hassan ibn Thabit. He was the poet of the Prophet ﷺ, and he used to criticize the mushrikeen with poems. And it was much more harder on them than swords, because people would circulate, "Oh, they said so and so about your family. They said so and so about your fear and being coward and running away from battle." And all the Arabs would talk about it. So poetry at the time was like CNN, was like, news agencies. So these are 5 types of jihad that we make. And the jihad technically is divided into 2 types. In Arabic they call jihadul dafa', and the second is jihadul talab. Jihadul dafa' is what everyone agrees upon, which is the jihad based on defense. So when someone attacks you, you dafa'. Dafa', you find it in the doors, idfa', meaning push. So someone attacks your country, attacks your family, what do? It's legitimate. Even the kuffar say you can do it. That is to defend yourself. This was found at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and it's found until today. The other type of jihad is the one that everyone trying to hide, and it's called jihadul talab. And this means that the jihad of pursuing, running after. And this jihad was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But this jihad cannot be accomplished, cannot take place unless the state of the Muslims is strong. If you don't have a strong Muslim country, who can they pursue or attack? No, stay where you are. Just try to fix yourself, enrich your people with Islamic knowledge and Iman, then you can go. And what is the reason behind such jihad? Number 1, to call them to Islam. It is for da'wah. The jihad is only for da'wah. That is why when Muslims go and conquer the adjacent country, what do? We kill them all? No. The Prophet says, the first thing you do is call them to Islam.
Hey, Annabeth.
Hey, Levi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
As you know, we're on this journey through a post-October 7th Israel. And we're really trying to figure out what Israel looks like in this situation. We've had a chance to talk to quite a few people now, and looking forward to our conversation because you used to be a part of something called the Students for Justice in Palestine movement. Is that right?
Yes, I
Can you tell us a little bit about this movement?
Sure. SJP is a pretty highly organized student movement at universities all over the U.S. and other places that really focuses on boycotting Israel in favor of the liberation of Palestine.
Okay, so boycotting Israel, liberation of Palestine. I believe this is the same group that was involved and really supported a lot of the campus university protests in the spring of 24. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So you used to be a part of this group. What led you to be a part of Students for Justice in Palestine?
So I love languages, and I studied linguistics in university, and one of my languages was Arabic. And so as I was learning the language, I got really in touch with the culture, and I made tons of Arab friends, and many of them were Palestinian American or Palestinian descent. And so I got to know them, and they were amazing people, and I got to know their family stories, and they were really, really tragic. And so I felt like that was the right move. I felt like I was on the side of justice and righteousness because I felt horrible over what had happened to them.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's natural that we would take compassion on people and hear their stories and so forth. So what did it look like to be involved in this group? What are some of the activities that you were a part of?
Yeah, we would do fundraisers and protests and generally just connect together over shared ideology.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But you're not a part of that group now, right?
I'm not.
Okay, so something happened along the way, and you left the group Students for Justice in Palestine. What is it that changed?
Well, I ended up visiting Israel, and that really changed a lot of things for me.
Okay, so you came to Israel, and what happened on that trip?
Well, I had been taught a lot of things about Israel, and when I came here, I came just for a biblically based archaeology tour, a short tour because I love the Bible and I've studied it since I was young, and that's all I expected to find. But what I actually also found was an entire nation of people that I had been discounting. I had never heard the Israeli side of the story, and so I began to meet Israeli people, both Arab and Jewish Israelis, and hearing their stories, and it began to really shake my paradigm. It was actually very uncomfortable.
Okay, so what are some of the foundational things that you believed, but then when you got here and you started talking to people, you realized, oh, this is different than I've been told?
Yes, I really saw Israel as kind of this harsh, cruel kind of Goliath. To the David of the Palestinian struggle, if you accept the biblical metaphor. But what I actually found when I got to know Jewish people and Israeli people and their life stories and their generational trauma, I started to understand that there's a way deeper history that I was not aware of. And I had learned one side of this story.
Yeah.
But in fact, when I started learning the other side of the story, I began to understand that actually that wasn't the truth, that Israel is actually more of the David in this struggle, in the Goliath of the surrounding 22 Arab states, if you will.
Yeah, because, the nation of Israel is about the size of New Jersey.
Yes.
And the landmass of the Arab nations surrounding Israel, far outnumbers this little tiny nation.
Yeah.
And I think with a visit here, like you're saying, you're able to see that this area is so small.
It is.
Especially compared to the United States where we make our home. So you came here, you talked to Israelis, you heard maybe what you'd call a different narrative.
Yes.
And that narrative wasn't what Students in Justice for Palestine was telling you.
Yeah.
Okay. What else contributed to your heart for the Jewish people, which you now seem to have?
You know, there were multiple aspects to it. The big one, the hurdle I had to get over was intellectual, because I was just like, I can't, with my justice, like, understanding, I can't understand how this could happen. How do we still have this crisis today? Why are there still Palestinian refugees? It makes no sense.
Right.
And so I started researching the history of the conflict in depth and reading primary sources and reading books about the history. And I learned so many things that really began to surprise me. The big one for me is the refugee issue, and it's still a horribly painful issue. And I don't want to discount that at all, but what I noticed was that in 1948, after the Six-Day War and everything that happened and unfolded, I'd always known that there were about 700,000 refugees that were created during the War of Independence in 1948. But after I started learning and digging a bit deeper into the history, I also learned an entire other side of the story I'd never heard, which was the fact that there were over 850,000 Jewish refugees that were created all throughout the Middle East and North Africa as they were ethnically cleansed and driven from their homes. But yet the 700,000 Palestinian people were left, many of them, stateless. And that's a tragedy, and we have to ask why.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because certainly I would say what captures most headlines today, at least the headlines that I read, is the Palestinian refugee problem.
Yes.
But what you're saying is, in 1948, there were over 800,000 Jewish refugees, if I hear you right.
Yes.
But Israel absorbed all those, and so they're no longer considered refugees.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and the Palestinian people are, and there are so many reasons for that.
Yeah.
And that's what I started to understand on an intellectual level, really understanding like what is going on here, what happened here. And then it was also on a deeper spiritual level, because for me, I grew up in a Christian home. I've always read the Bible. I came to Israel and I experienced a very profound, whoa, my entire faith, everything that gives my life meaning and purpose was born in this land. And Jesus, Yeshua, was a Jewish rabbi, and he had so many things to say to the people of this region, and I received this message, by proxy in a way. And so there was kind of a new humility with that. And it also made me understand, wait a second, the biggest thing for me, I'll tell you, was an experience I had in Yad Vashem, which is the memorial to the victims of the Holocaust, the Shoah. And I had been there. I'd been to many Holocaust museums. It wasn't like it was a new message. But what happened to me as I walked into that museum was I realized, wait, this is the story of the generational trauma of the Jewish people, and by extension of the Israeli people. And anti-Semitism is so widespread throughout thousands of years of history that this just is not normal. There has to be a deeper spiritual evil underneath this hatred. It's called the oldest hatred, right? And so I also realized that I had been complicit in that I had, in my hatred towards Israel, that I had actually been buying into an anti-Semitic ideology, not just a healthy criticism of the Israeli government, which we should all be able to do for any country.
But
it was something else.
Yeah, I appreciate that distinction. You're saying there is a difference between believing certain narratives which might cast Israel or the Jewish people in a way that's simply not true,
right,
and criticism,
mm-hmm,
right? Because none of us should escape some kind of criticism, especially a government.
Right. Well, and I would say Israelis are their own harshest critics. My Israeli friends are extraordinarily critical of their government from whatever side they fall. And Israelis are actually not a monolith at all. They're ethnically diverse. They're ideologically diverse. There's left, there's right, there's center, just like in the U.S.
Yeah.
We're not all the same.
Which is a sign of a good, healthy society.
It is.
A pluralistic society where folks can debate and believe whatever they want. I'm not sure that most folks are aware of that.
Yeah.
So you were telling us about how your heart was changed, and you mentioned the Bible and so forth. Did God play any other role in that? What was God doing in your heart as this change was happening? He obviously was showing you were complicit in something that you shouldn't have been. Yeah. You mentioned he was showing you that you were kind of in debt to this people. So is there anything else?
Yes, I think there was a level of repentance there when I realized that just means to change your mind. And I just said right there, you know what, I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention. I want, justice and goodness and love for all people, and I didn't know that I was partnering this, but I was. And you know, it was just so clear to me that there was such a change in my heart after that moment, because when I used to see an Israeli soldier, I would have a certain set of thoughts, you know, that were very negative. They were very like, you know, and then it changed, and I really believe that was a work of God in my heart, because then I would see an Israeli soldier and I would think, man, you're just a person. You're just a human who has your own story, and you have your own pain, and just like I do, and just like my friends do.
Yeah. So I have one final question for you, and it's this. If you could speak to someone who's currently a part of the Students for Justice in Palestine movement, what would you say to them? Because there may be some viewers who are hearing your story and they're currently involved in it just like you were.
Yes, you know, I would say that your impulse for justice is a good thing. And I would just say that, you know, please be careful to make sure that it's placed rightly, that you get all of the facts before you make your opinion. I think a lot of times we just have this human tendency to kind of have our tribe, have our opinion, and then we don't accept any other information that doesn't fit the narrative we've created, and that's really not okay. And it takes courage to think outside of that paradigm. So I would say, you know, it's good to care about the downtrodden, but I just would hope that you would care for all of humanity too, and to care enough to really investigate the situation and look for facts.
Yeah.
And
well, it seems to me like one of the major things that helped you just see things differently is not only the intellectual pursuit of wanting the truth, which is important, but you came to Israel.
Yes.
And you talked to people and you saw the land and so forth. Would you recommend other people come to Israel and see it?
100%. That was just such a game changer. It's one thing to read about it. It's one thing to hear a TikTok, you know, about it. It's another thing to come here and to meet people. And I think there's also a humility with that, of understanding, like, I don't know everything about this situation. And also for the majority of people who are approaching this, if you don't have a personal connection, you know, with either side of this conflict, like, there's this tendency to project my own guilts or problems or desires onto it. But really, if you come here and you meet people and you understand their lives a little bit better, I think we can drop some of our self-centeredness and actually just see people for who they are.
And not all Muslims are bad. Don't think because everything we've watched in this video and everything we've covered makes all Muslims bad people. That is not true, and that is not what I'm trying to show. I'm going strictly off the books. There are plenty of Muslims who want peace, who live peacefully. I have a lot of Muslim friends who are the kindest people you will ever meet. This video is in no way meant to tell people to go out and hate Muslims. This video is clearly teaching the people who are marching in support of Hamas, helping Hamas spread their message to strengthen their cause, to eliminate the Jews and cause genocide. It's to awaken them to the truth of what they're really doing and to show that the land has always belonged to Israel. It is not an apartheid state, and that everybody just needs to love each other, despite religion, despite color, creed. The only way we're all going to get along and have peace is if we accept one another, learn from each other, love one another. That is the only way we're ever going to live in peace, guys. If we keep following false narratives that want to endanger any group of people, we're only spreading the message of hate. Please educate yourselves, guys. That's all I'm trying to say. Before you go out and start saying free Palestine from the river to the sea and spreading Hamas's message, educate yourselves. Please. You guys, thank you so much for watching my channel again. I appreciate it. I don't know where this channel is going to go. I just am having so much fun taking the stuff that I've learned, all the notes over the past few years, compiling them into actual videos to where I can share what I've learned outside of the documentary. I'm having a blast doing this. One more time again, I just want to tell you guys thank you so much. Always thank you so much for watching my videos, for taking the time to comment. Even if I disagree, I appreciate your thoughts. I think you have the right to feel and think and say whatever you want. So please, I welcome you to do that. However, I will not be debating on my channel. That's not what my channel is for. If you guys want to help me grow this channel and help with my documentary series so I can travel, I can show you more interviews, more places, put out more great footage, please consider donating to my GoFundMe. All the funds go directly towards traveling, lodging, food, etc. I have 3 kids. I'm a father of 3. One is about to graduate high school. I'm not rich by any means. This helps me out, and I appreciate the community that I'm starting to build with you guys. This is really fun. I'm loving doing it. I want to thank my best friend Richard behind the camera for taking time out of his life to help me make these. He's an awesome photographer, videographer. Please check him out. I'll put his links in the description below. Again, thank you so much, guys. God bless. I hope you guys have a great day.